After 68 years on this earth, you develop an instinct for when life is about to shift beneath your feet. The delivery man handed me a pristine white box tied with a pale pink ribbon, the kind of presentation that screamed expensive bakery. "From your daughter," he said with a smile that I didn't return. "Ainsley." My 35-year-old daughter, who hadn't baked anything for me since she was 12 years old, and even then, it was only because her teacher required it for a school project. I stood in my doorway, holding this unexpected gift, feeling the weight of it in my hands like a stone in my stomach. I carried the box to my kitchen table and carefully untied the ribbon. Inside were 6 perfectly decorated cupcakes, each one a work of art with delicate buttercream roses and gold leaf sprinkles. They were beautiful. Too beautiful. Too perfect for someone who barely remembered my birthday last year. The smell hit me immediately when I lifted the lid. Sweet vanilla and something else. Something that didn't belong. I've been baking since I was old enough to reach the counter. Helped my own mother run her small bakery for 15 years before I married Ainsley's father. I know what cupcakes should smell like, and this wasn't it. There was an undertone, bitter and chemical, masked but not hidden completely by the frosting's sweetness. My hands started trembling as I set the box down. Why would Ainsley send me cupcakes? We hadn't spoken in 3 weeks, not since our last argument about her constant requests for money. She'd hung up on me when I refused to pay for her daughter's private school tuition again. I picked up one cupcake, examining it closely. The frosting was applied too thickly, as if covering something. When I pressed gently with my finger, the cake felt dense, heavier than it should be. My mouth went dry. 47 years of marriage to Harold had taught me to trust my instincts, especially when they screamed danger. He'd been gone for 6 months now, and maybe that's what this was about. The inheritance, the house, the life insurance money that Ainsley knew was sitting in my account. I set the cupcake down and walked away from the table. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the kitchen counter to steady myself. Think, Ramona. Think. The phone rang 20 minutes later. I let it ring 3 times before answering, composing myself. "Hello?" "Mom." Ainsley's voice was bright, artificially cheerful. "Did you get my little surprise?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "What surprise, honey?" "The cupcakes I sent over, aren't they gorgeous? I had them made special at that new boutique bakery downtown. Cost me a fortune, but you're worth it." Cost her a fortune. Ainsley, who'd called me crying 2 weeks ago because she couldn't afford her mortgage payment. Ainsley, who'd been borrowing money from me monthly since her divorce 3 years ago. Where exactly did she get money for expensive bakery cupcakes? "Oh, those," I said carefully, my mind racing. "They're very pretty." "Well, don't just look at them. Try one. I specifically requested your favorite flavor, vanilla with buttercream. Go ahead, take a bite. I'll wait." The eagerness in her voice made my stomach turn. She wanted to hear me eat them. She was waiting on the phone to hear me consume whatever she'd put in those cupcakes. "Actually, sweetie," I said, the lie forming before I could stop it. "I already gave them to Mrs. Henderson next door. You know how she's been struggling since her husband died. I thought she could use a treat." Silence. Complete, dead silence on the other end of the line. "Mom?" Ainsley's voice had changed completely. The artificial sweetness was gone, replaced by something cold and sharp. "What did you just say?" "I gave them to my neighbor. She was so grateful." "Why? You gave them away?" Her voice was rising now, panic creeping in. "All of them?" My blood turned to ice. "Yes, honey. Was I not supposed to? You didn't say they were just for me." "Mom!" The scream that came through the phone was so loud I had to hold it away from my ear. "What have you done? You gave them to who? When? How long ago?" I'd never heard Ainsley sound like this. Not when she was a tantruming toddler, not during her rebellious teenage years, not even during her messy divorce. This was pure terror, the kind that comes from watching your carefully laid plans crumble. "Ainsley, what's wrong? They're just cupcakes." "They're not just." She caught herself, but too late. The damage was done. I have to go, Mom. I'll call you back." The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. The beautiful cupcakes sat on my table like pretty little bombs, Their secret's safe for now, but I knew. God help me, I knew what my own daughter had tried to do. The woman who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who I'd rocked to sleep countless nights when she was small, had just tried to poison me, and I'd caught her. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in the bed I'd shared with Harold for 4 decades, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of what had happened. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Ainsley's scream echoing in my mind. That wasn't the reaction of someone whose innocent gift had been shared with a neighbor. That was the reaction of someone whose plan had gone terribly wrong. By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. I called Dr. Martinez's office first thing and explained I had some baked goods I wanted tested. I didn't go into details, just said I was concerned about food safety. An hour later, I was sitting in his office with one of the cupcakes sealed in a plastic bag. "Mrs. Patterson," Dr. Martinez said, his kind eyes studying me carefully, "is there something specific you're worried about?" I'd known him for 15 years. He'd treated Harold through his final illness, had been nothing but compassionate and thorough. If anyone would help me without judgment, it was him. "I think someone might have put something in these that shouldn't be there," I said quietly. "Something to make me sick. Or worse." His expression grew serious. "I'll have the lab run a full analysis. It might take a day or 2. While I waited for those results, I decided to do some investigating of my own. Ainsley had always been secretive about her finances, but Harold had been the one who usually handled her requests for money. Now that he was gone, I realized I had no idea what her real situation was. I started with the obvious place, her social media. Ainsley loved posting about her life, showing off her perfect house and her perfect children. But as I scrolled through months of posts, I started noticing things that didn't add up. 3 months ago, she'd posted about taking the kids to Disney World, expensive vacation, lots of photos at fancy restaurants and resort hotels. 2 months ago, she'd shown off a new designer handbag that I knew cost more than most people's rent. Last month, professional family photos in coordinated outfits that probably cost hundreds of dollars. Yet she'd been calling me weekly, crying about money troubles. Mortgage payments, credit card bills, her ex-husband missing child support payments. I'd sent her $3,000 just in the past 2 months. I called my old friend Martha, who worked at the bank where Ainsley had her accounts. We'd known each other since high school, and she'd helped me with financial matters before. "Martha, I need a favor," I said. "It's about Ainsley. I'm worried about her." "Oh, honey, I wish I could help, but you know I can't discuss customer accounts." "I'm not asking you to break any rules. Can you tell me if she's been having the kind of financial problems she claims to have?" There was a long pause. "Ramona, are you in some kind of trouble?" "I might be. Please, Martha. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." Another pause. "All I can say is, if someone told me they couldn't afford their basic bills, but their account showed regular large purchases at luxury stores and expensive restaurants, I might wonder about their priorities." My heart sank. "Thank you, Martha. Honey, be careful. Money does strange things to people, especially when there's a lot of it involved. A lot of it." Harold's life insurance had been substantial, enough to keep me comfortable for the rest of my life, with plenty left over for Ainsley and the grandchildren. We'd never hidden that from her. In fact, we'd always told her she didn't need to worry about her future, because she'd be well taken care of after we were gone. Maybe that had been our mistake. I spent the afternoon going through Harold's papers, looking for anything that might explain Ainsley's desperation. That's when I found the folder labeled Ainsley, Financial Help. Harold had been keeping meticulous records. The numbers made me sick. Over the past 5 years, we'd given Ainsley more than $60,000. Harold had documented every request, every transfer, every excuse. Car repairs that turned out to be down payments on new cars. Medical emergencies that coincided with vacation photos. School expenses for private education that the children weren't even receiving. She'd been lying to us for years, but the most disturbing entry was from just 2 weeks before Harold died. He'd written, "Ainsley asking about inheritance details. Wants to know about timing, legal requirements. Seemed very interested in power of attorney procedures. Told her we'd discuss after funeral arrangements." Harold had died suddenly, heart attack in his sleep. There'd been no time for that discussion. The phone rang, interrupting my dark thoughts. Dr. Martinez. Mrs. Patterson, you need to come in right away, and I think you should consider calling the police. My hands started shaking again. What did you find? I can't discuss this over the phone. Can you come in this afternoon? An hour later, I sat across from Dr. Martinez as he explained what the lab had found. The cupcakes contained a significant amount of diazepam, a sedative that would have rendered me unconscious for hours. Mixed with my blood pressure medication, it could have been fatal. This wasn't an accident, he said gently. This was a deliberate attempt to drug you. The amount was precisely calculated for someone your size and age. I walked out of his office in a daze. My own daughter hadn't just tried to drug me. She'd tried to do it in a way that could have killed me. And I was starting to understand why. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with all of Harold's paperwork spread out in front of me. The will, the insurance policies, the bank account information. If I had been unconscious, if I had been declared mentally incompetent or worse, Ainsley would have inherited everything immediately. But there was something else in the papers, something I'd never paid attention to before. A codicil Harold had added to his will just months before he died. He'd been having doubts about Ainsley's financial responsibility. The new provision required that her inheritance be held in a trust, dispensed gradually over time, unless I specifically chose to override that condition. Ainsley didn't know about the trust. She thought one signature from me would give her immediate access to everything. The phone rang. I looked at the caller ID and saw Ainsley's name. For a moment, I considered not answering, but I needed to know how far she was willing to go. Hello, honey. Mom, I've been thinking about yesterday, about the cupcakes. Her voice was careful now, controlled. I think maybe we should talk. Can I come over tomorrow? Of course. What time? How about 10 in the morning? I'll bring coffee. After I hung up, I sat staring at the phone. She was coming back, with more food, more chances to drug me. But this time, I'd be ready. I didn't sleep again that night. Instead, I spent the dark hours preparing for Ainsley's visit, my mind working through possibilities I'd never imagined I'd have to consider. By dawn, I'd made several phone calls and arrangements that I prayed I'd never need to use. The first call was to my lawyer, Robert Chen, who'd handled Harold's estate. I asked him to come to the house at 11, an hour after Ainsley's planned arrival. Is everything all right, Mrs. Patterson? He asked, concern evident in his voice. I need to discuss some changes to my will. And Robert, if something seems wrong when you arrive, don't hesitate to call for help. The second call was to my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, the woman I'd supposedly given the cupcakes to. I explained the situation as carefully as I could without sounding completely insane. You mean your own daughter? She couldn't finish the sentence. I need you to do me a favor. At exactly 10:15, I want you to call my house phone. If I don't answer, or if I sound strange, call 911 immediately. Mrs. Henderson agreed, though I could hear the shock in her voice. At 9:30, I positioned myself by the front window and waited. Ainsley arrived precisely at 10, carrying a coffee tray and wearing what I'd always called her sweet daughter outfit, a pale blue dress that made her look younger and more innocent. Morning, Mom, she said, kissing my cheek as she entered. I brought your favorite, vanilla latte with extra foam. I accepted the cup but didn't drink. Thank you, honey. You didn't have to do that. Of course I did. I felt terrible about yesterday. I overreacted about the cupcakes. I was just disappointed that you didn't get to try them yourself. Her smile was perfect, practiced. I know how much you love sweets. We sat in the living room, and I watched her carefully. She seemed nervous, checking her watch repeatedly and glancing toward the hallway where Harold's old office was located. Mom, I've been thinking about Dad's papers, all those legal documents and financial stuff. It must be overwhelming trying to handle everything alone. I'm managing fine, but wouldn't it be easier if someone helped you? I could take care of all that paperwork, make sure nothing important gets missed. There it was, the real reason for her visit. What kind of paperwork are you thinking about? Ainsley's eyes lit up, thinking she was making progress. Well, the will, for instance, and the insurance policies. I know Dad had everything set up, but sometimes there are forms that need to be signed. updates that need to be made. What kind of updates? Oh, making sure beneficiaries are current, that sort of thing. Sometimes it's better to simplify things, make them more straightforward. My coffee sat untouched on the table between us. I could see her glancing at it, waiting for me to drink. Ainsley, can I ask you something? Of course, Mom. Where did you get the money for those expensive cupcakes yesterday and the coffee today? Her face flushed slightly. I told you, I saved up. I wanted to do something nice for you. Saved up from what? Last week you called crying because you couldn't afford Emma's school fees. That's different. That's a big expense. This was just a small treat. I leaned forward slightly. $60 for cupcakes isn't small when you're supposedly broke. Ainsley's mask began to slip. I don't understand why you're questioning every little thing I do. I'm trying to be a good daughter. Are you? The question hung in the air between us. Ainsley's smile faltered completely. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know what was in those cupcakes. The color drained from her face. For a moment, she looked like the child who'd been caught stealing cookies from the jar. Then her expression hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. Diazepam. Enough to knock me unconscious for hours. Maybe enough to kill me considering my blood pressure medication. Ainsley stood up abruptly. That's crazy. You're imagining things. Maybe you should see a doctor about your mental state. I did see a doctor. He tested the cupcakes. I have the lab report. The silence that followed was deafening. Ainsley stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Finally, she sank back into her chair. Mom, you don't understand. I'm in real trouble. I owe people money. Dangerous people. What people? I got involved with some investment schemes. They went bad. Now they want their money back, and I don't have it. How much? 50,000, maybe more. I felt a chill run down my spine. So you decided to drug me? What was the plan, Ainsley? Drug me, and then what? She wouldn't meet my eyes. I just needed access to some of the inheritance money. Just a loan. I would have paid it back. How exactly were you planning to get access while I was unconscious? There's a lawyer coming today. He was supposed to help me with some paperwork. My blood turned to ice. What lawyer? Someone who specializes in estate planning. He said if you were incapacitated, he could help speed things along. You mean if I was declared mentally incompetent? Ainsley's silence was answer enough. The phone rang at exactly 10:15. Mrs. Henderson, right on schedule. I answered it while keeping my eyes on Ainsley. Oh, hello, Mrs. Henderson. Yes, I'm fine. No, I don't need anything right now. Thank you for checking. Ainsley was watching me with growing suspicion. Who was that? My neighbor, the one I supposedly gave your poisoned cupcakes to. Understanding dawned in Ainsley's eyes. You never gave them to her. No, I lied. Just like you've been lying to me for years. Ainsley stood up again, this time with purpose. Mom, you need to understand. I'm desperate. These people will hurt me if I don't pay them. Then you should have come to me honestly, asked for help instead of trying to drug me. Would you have given me $50,000, just like that, for dangerous gambling debts? No. For legitimate help, for your children's welfare? Probably. Probably isn't good enough. Ainsley's voice was rising now, the sweet daughter act completely abandoned. I need guarantees. I need security. Security? You tried to poison your own mother for security? I didn't try to poison you. I just wanted you to sleep for a few hours. And then what? Have me declared incompetent? Take control of everything? Ainsley's eyes were wild now. You're going to die anyway, Mom. You're 68 years old. Why should I have to wait and hope that you leave me enough to solve my problems? The words hit me like physical blows. This wasn't desperation talking. This was calculation. Cold, heartless calculation. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, wait, we can work this out. Get out of my house. Now. You don't understand what you're doing. If I don't pay these people back, that's your problem. You made these choices. Deal with the consequences. Ainsley's face twisted with fury. You're going to regret this. I'm not going away. This isn't over. She stormed toward the door, then turned back one last time. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what I'm capable of. You have no idea how far I'll go." The door slammed behind her, rattling the windows. I sat in my living room, my heart pounding, knowing that she was right about one thing. This wasn't over. The lawyer arrived 20 minutes after Ainsley left. I watched from my window as a thin man in an expensive suit approached my door, briefcase in hand. He knocked confidently, clearly expecting to find a drugged, compliant woman ready to sign whatever documents he'd brought. Instead, he found me wide awake and furious. "Mrs. Patterson? I'm David Blackwood. I believe your daughter scheduled an appointment for us." "My daughter scheduled nothing with my knowledge or consent. I suggest you leave before I call the police." His confident demeanor cracked slightly. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Ms. Patterson contacted my office about updating your estate planning documents." Ms. Patterson had no authority to contact anyone on my behalf. And if you're here to help someone declare me incompetent while I'm supposedly drugged, you're in for a very unpleasant surprise. The man's face went pale. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm implying that you and my daughter had a plan to take advantage of an elderly woman, and that plan has failed spectacularly. Now get off my property." He left quickly, probably realizing that whatever Ainsley had promised him wasn't worth the legal trouble he was about to face. Robert Chen arrived at 11 as planned, and I explained everything that had happened. His face grew increasingly grim as I recounted Ainsley's visit and the drugged cupcakes. "Ramona, this is attempted poisoning at minimum, possibly attempted murder, depending on how the prosecutor views it. You need to file a police report." "I know, but first, I need to protect myself from whatever she's planning next." We spent the next hour updating my will and adding specific provisions. If anything happened to me under suspicious circumstances, Ainsley would be completely disinherited. I also created a new power of attorney document, naming Robert as my representative instead of Ainsley. "There," I said, signing the final document. "Now she has nothing to gain from harming me." "But she doesn't know that yet," Robert pointed out. "She might try again before she realizes the situation has changed." He was right to worry. 3 days later, Ainsley returned, but this time she didn't come alone. I was reading in my living room when I heard car doors slamming outside. Through the window, I saw Ainsley walking up my front path with 2 people I didn't recognize. A middle-aged woman in a business suit and a large man who looked like he'd be more at home in a bar fight than on my front lawn. Ainsley didn't knock. She used her key, the one I'd given her years ago for emergencies. "Mom, we need to talk." The woman with her stepped forward. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm Dr. Sarah Mills. I understand you've been having some concerns about your memory and decision-making abilities." "I've been having no such concerns. Your daughter is worried about you. She says you've been making accusations, behaving erratically." I looked at Ainsley, who was standing behind this fake doctor with her arms crossed. "What exactly did you tell her?" "I told her the truth, Mom, that you're getting confused, making up stories about poisoned cupcakes, accusing me of terrible things." The large man spoke for the first time. "Mrs. Patterson, we're here to help. Sometimes elderly people don't realize when they need assistance. And who exactly are you?" "Tom Bradley. I work with Dr. Mills. We specialize in helping families through difficult transitions." I realized what was happening. This wasn't a medical consultation. This was an intervention designed to make me appear mentally incompetent. "I want all of you to leave my house immediately." "Mom, we can't leave you alone when you're like this," Ainsley said, her voice taking on that false sweetness again. "Dr. Mills thinks you might benefit from some professional care. I'm not going anywhere with any of you." Dr. Mills opened her briefcase and pulled out some papers. "We have some forms here that might help clarify your legal status. If you're having memory issues, it might be best to let someone you trust handle your affairs." "Someone I trust? Like the daughter who tried to poison me 3 days ago?" "See?" Ainsley said to the doctor. "She's completely paranoid. She thinks I'm trying to hurt her." "I don't think it. I know it. I have lab reports proving what you put in those cupcakes." Dr. Mills looked skeptical. "Mrs. Patterson, paranoid delusions are very common in elderly patients. The mind often creates elaborate scenarios to explain ordinary events." Ordinary events? There was nothing ordinary about diazepam in my food. "Mom, please just sign the papers. Ainsley pleaded. "We just want to make sure you're taken care of." I looked at the documents Dr. Mills was holding: power of attorney forms, competency declarations, medical authorizations. Everything Ainsley would need to take control of my life and finances. "If I refuse to sign?" Tom Bradley stepped closer. "Sometimes people who are having mental health episodes need to be taken somewhere safe for their own protection." The threat was clear. "Sign the papers or be forcibly removed from my home." "I need to use the bathroom," I said. "Of course," Dr. Mills said, "but Tom will need to escort you, for your safety." I walked to the bathroom with this stranger following me, my mind racing. They were going to take me away whether I signed their papers or not. Once I was in some facility, Ainsley could claim I was incompetent and take control of everything, but I had one advantage they didn't know about. When I came out of the bathroom, I found them waiting in my living room. Dr. Mills had spread the papers across my coffee table. "Mrs. Patterson, if you'll just sign here, we can arrange for you to be evaluated at a very nice facility, somewhere you'll be comfortable and safe. Before I sign anything, I have one question." "Of course. How much is my daughter paying you for this?" Dr. Mills looked uncomfortable. "I'm not sure what you mean." "I mean, how much money is Ainsley giving you to falsely declare me incompetent?" "Mom, stop it," Ainsley snapped. "Dr. Mills is a respected professional." "Really? What's your license number, Dr. Mills?" The woman's face flushed. "I don't see why that's relevant." "Because I'm going to call the medical board and verify your credentials before I sign anything." Tom Bradley stepped forward again. "Mrs. Patterson, you're becoming agitated. That's not helping your case." "My case? I thought this was about my health, not a legal case." That's when I played my ace. "Before we go any further, I think you should all know that my lawyer has already been here. I've updated my will and power of attorney documents. If anything happens to me under suspicious circumstances, Ainsley inherits nothing." The room went silent. Ainsley's face turned white. "You what?" "I changed everything. You have nothing to gain from having me declared incompetent or harming me in any way." Dr. Mills and Tom Bradley exchanged glances. Whatever Ainsley had promised them, it wasn't worth the risk now. "Perhaps we should reschedule this evaluation," Dr. Mills said, already packing up her papers. "There won't be a reschedule," I said firmly. "And if any of you set foot on my property again, I'll call the police." They left quickly, but Ainsley remained. "You can't do this to me," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "I'm your daughter." "You stopped being my daughter the moment you tried to poison me. Those people I owe money to, they're not going to wait forever. Then I suggest you find another solution, one that doesn't involve drugging your mother. You don't understand what they'll do to me. Probably nothing worse than what you were planning to do to me." Ainsley's face contorted with fury. "You're going to regret this. You think you're safe because you changed your will? There are other ways to get what I need." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. I'm not giving up. I can't give up." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard that a picture fell off the wall. I stood in my empty house, knowing that she was right about one thing. She wasn't giving up, which meant I had to be ready for whatever she tried next. For 2 weeks after Ainsley's failed attempt with the fake doctor, my house felt like a fortress under siege. I installed new locks, security cameras, and motion sensors. Mrs. Henderson checked on me twice daily, and I'd given Robert Chen instructions to call the police if I didn't answer my phone by a certain time each evening. But I knew Ainsley wasn't finished. Desperate people don't give up easily, and according to her own admission, she owed dangerous people more money than she could possibly repay through legitimate means. I was still her only viable solution. The call came on a Thursday morning. Ainsley's voice was different, broken, defeated. "Mom, I need to see you. Please. I know you hate me, but I'm begging you. Ainsley, please, just give me 5 minutes. I'll come to you. We can talk on your front porch if you don't want me inside. I need to apologize. Really apologize." Something in her tone made me hesitate. She sounded genuinely desperate, but not in the calculated way she'd been before. This sounded like someone who'd reached the end of their rope. 5 minutes, I said finally. On the porch, she arrived an hour later, and I barely recognized her. The polished, manipulative woman who'd been visiting me was gone. This Ainsley had dark circles under her eyes, unwashed hair, and clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. She sat heavily on my porch steps, not even trying to maintain her usual perfect posture. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." I remained standing, my hand near the door handle in case I needed to escape quickly. "What happened to you?" "The people I owe money to. They found out my plan failed. They're not happy." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing a dark bruise on her forearm. This was just a warning. Despite everything she'd done, seeing my daughter hurt made my heart clench. "Ainsley, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I tried to hurt you. I tried to steal from you. But I'm out of options." Tears were streaming down her face now. "They're going to kill me, Mom. And they said they'd hurt Emma and Jack too. My grandchildren, the innocent ones in all of this. How much time do you have?" 3 days. They want the money in 3 days. Or, she didn't finish the sentence. I studied her carefully. Was this another manipulation? Another act designed to make me feel sorry for her? But the bruises looked real, and the fear in her eyes seemed genuine. "There might be a way," I said slowly. Her head snapped up. "What?" I said might. "It would require you to do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you, with no questions asked. Anything. I'll do anything. First, you need to understand something. I know about the trust your father set up. I know that even if something happened to me, you wouldn't get the money immediately." Her face fell. "What trust?" "Harold was worried about your financial responsibility. He arranged for your inheritance to be dispensed gradually over time, unless I specifically override that provision." "Can you? Override it?" "Yes, but only if I'm alive and mentally competent." Ainsley nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "Tomorrow, you're going to call those people and tell them you'll have their money in 24 hours. Then you're going to come here at exactly 2 o'clock with whatever paperwork they want as proof of payment." "But Mom, I don't have." "Let me finish. You're going to come here, and we're going to make it look like I'm signing documents to release your inheritance early. But it's going to be a trap. I don't understand. The police are going to be here, hidden. They're going to witness whatever threats these people make, whatever they do to try to force my cooperation. And then they're going to arrest everyone involved." Ainsley went pale. "Including me? That depends. Are you willing to cooperate with the police? Tell them everything about who these people are? How you got involved with them? They'll kill me if I cooperate. They'll kill you anyway once they realize the money isn't coming. This way, at least you have a chance." She sat in silence for a long moment, weighing her options. "What about Emma and Jack?" "I've already arranged for them to be picked up from school tomorrow and taken somewhere safe. Your ex-husband doesn't know what's happening, but he's agreed to keep them for an extended visit." "You did that already?" "I've been planning this for days, Ainsley. I knew you'd be back, and I knew you'd be more desperate than before." She looked at me with something that might have been admiration. "You really thought this through?" "I had to. You're my daughter, despite everything you've done. I wasn't going to let you die without trying to save you. Even after I tried to poison you? Even then." The next afternoon, I waited in my living room with Detective Rivera and Detective Chang hidden in my kitchen and bedroom respectively. They'd wired me with a recording device and positioned backup officers around the neighborhood. Ainsley arrived first, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen her. She kept checking her watch and jumping at every sound. "They'll be here soon," she said. "Are you sure about this? It's too late to change the plan now." At exactly 2:30, a black SUV pulled up outside. 3 men got out, 2 large ones who looked like enforcers, and 1 smaller man in an expensive suit who was clearly in charge. They didn't knock. Ainsley had apparently given them permission to just walk in. "Mrs. Patterson," the man in the suit said, his voice smooth but with an underlying threat. "I'm Vincent Caruso. I believe you know why we're here." "You're here because my daughter owes you money. $60,000 to be precise, plus interest. We're here to collect." "And if I don't pay?" His smile was cold. "Let's not discuss unpleasant possibilities. I'm sure a smart woman like you understands the situation." One of the large men stepped closer to me. "Mr. Caruso doesn't like to be kept waiting." "I have the paperwork right here," I said, gesturing to the documents on my coffee table, "but I need some assurances before I sign anything." What kind of assurances? I need to know that this ends here. That once you get your money, you leave my daughter and my grandchildren alone. Vincent laughed. Your daughter got herself into this mess by being greedy. She borrowed money for investments that didn't pan out. Now she pays the consequences. What investments? Online gambling, mostly. Some cryptocurrency nonsense. She thought she could get rich quick and pay us back with interest. He shrugged. She was wrong. And if I don't sign these papers? The larger man spoke this time. Old ladies can have accidents. Falls downstairs, kitchen fires, that sort of thing. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact, Vincent said. Now sign the papers. That's when Detective Rivera and Detective Chung emerged from their hiding places, guns drawn. Police! Everyone on the ground! The room erupted in chaos. The two large men went for their weapons, but the detectives were ready for them. Vincent tried to run but didn't make it to the door before backup officers came through. In less than 5 minutes, all 3 men were in handcuffs. Vincent was screaming about entrapment and illegal surveillance, but Detective Rivera just smiled. You threatened an elderly woman in her own home, sir. That's extortion and intimidation of a witness. Plus whatever weapons charges we find when we search you. As they led the men away, Ainsley sat on my couch, shaking. Is it over? For them, yes. For you, that depends on what you tell the prosecutors. What do you mean? Detective Rivera sat down across from her. Miss Patterson, you're going to need to testify against these men. And we're going to need to know everything about how you got involved with them, including what you tried to do to your mother. Ainsley looked at me, fear clear in her eyes. Tell them the truth, I said. All of it. It's the only way to make sure this ends. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll tell you everything. As the police finished taking statements and processing evidence, I realized that for the first time in weeks, I felt safe in my own home. The immediate threat was over, but I still had one more decision to make about Ainsley. 6 months later, I sat in my garden on a perfect spring morning, reading the newspaper and sipping coffee that I'd made myself. Coffee I knew was safe because I was the only one who'd touched it. The simple pleasure of that trust, of knowing my food and drink weren't weapons, was something I'd never take for granted again. The trial had ended 3 weeks ago. Vincent Caruso and his associates received significant prison sentences for extortion, threatening an elderly person, and weapons charges. The recordings from that afternoon in my living room had been damning evidence, along with testimony from other victims who finally felt safe enough to come forward. Ainsley had testified against them, just as she'd promised. In exchange for her cooperation, the prosecutor had offered her a plea deal: 3 years probation, community service, and mandatory counseling for gambling addiction. She'd also been required to pay restitution for the cost of having the cupcakes tested and for my security system installation. But perhaps most importantly, she'd lost any legal claim to Harold's estate. The attempted poisoning and the fraudulent documents she'd tried to use had voided her inheritance completely. I heard a car door slam and looked up to see my ex-son-in-law Derek walking up the garden path with Emma and Jack. This had become our routine, monthly visits where the children could see their grandmother without their mother's toxic influence. Grandma! 8-year-old Emma ran toward me, her arms outstretched. Jack, who was 10 and trying to be more grown up, walked at a more dignified pace but smiled when he saw me. Did you bring the puzzle? Emma asked, referring to the 1,000-piece jigsaw we'd been working on together. Of course. It's on the dining room table, just waiting for you. Derek lingered while the children ran inside. How are you doing, Ramona? Really? I'm well. Better than I've been in years, actually. Any word from Ainsley? I shook my head. Nothing since the sentencing. Derek, I need you to know that if something happens to me, everything I have is going to Emma and Jack through a trust fund. You'll be the trustee until they're adults. Ramona, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Those children deserve security, and they deserve to know that their grandmother loved them enough to make sure they'd be taken care of, but they also deserve to be protected from the influence of someone who would poison her own mother for money. Derek nodded solemnly. I've never told them exactly what happened. I just said their mother made some bad choices and needed time to get better. That's probably best for now. Maybe when they're older, they'll be able to understand. After Derek and the children left that evening, I walked through my house, appreciating the peace and safety I'd reclaimed. The security system was still in place. I wasn't naive enough to think all dangers had passed, but I no longer felt like a prisoner in my own home. I'd made other changes too. I'd joined a book club at the library, started volunteering at the local animal shelter, and even begun taking watercolor painting classes. For 68 years, I'd defined myself primarily as a wife and mother. Now, for the first time, I was discovering who Ramona Patterson was when she wasn't taking care of everyone else. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I checked the security monitor and saw a young woman I didn't recognize standing on my porch, holding what looked like a legal envelope. "Mrs. Patterson?" she said when I opened the door. "I'm Jennifer Walsh from the district attorney's office. I have some information about your daughter." My heart clenched. What about her? For she violated her probation. She was caught gambling again, and she missed her mandatory counseling sessions. There's a warrant out for her arrest. I wasn't surprised, but I was still saddened. "Do you know where she is?" "No, ma'am. But we wanted to inform you in case she tries to contact you. Given your history, we recommend you don't engage with her if she does." After Jennifer left, I sat in my living room thinking about the daughter I'd raised and the woman she'd become. Somewhere along the way, Ainsley had decided that the world owed her something, that she was entitled to wealth and comfort without having to work for them. I'd failed to see the signs early enough, failed to teach her that love and money weren't the same thing. But I'd also learned something about myself. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. When faced with betrayal by the person I'd loved most in the world, I hadn't crumbled. I'd fought back, not with anger or revenge, but with intelligence and careful planning. 2 weeks later, Ainsley called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up the phone. "Mom?" Her voice was small, frightened. "Ainsley. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I didn't know who else to call." "Where are you?" "I can't tell you that. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I did to you, how wrong it was. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry." I listened to the pain in her voice and felt an echo of the love I'd once had for her. But I also remembered the taste of fear when I realized what she'd tried to do to me. "Ainsley, you need to turn yourself in. Running won't solve anything. I can't go to prison, Mom. I won't survive it. You won't survive running either. Eventually they'll catch you and it will be worse. Maybe. But at least this way, I have some control over what happens." "What about Emma and Jack?" There was a long pause. "They're better off without me. We both know that." The line went quiet, and I realized she was crying. "I love you, Mom. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I do love you. I hope someday you can remember the good parts of who I used to be. Ainsley." But the line was already dead. I never heard from her again. 6 months later, Derek told me that she'd been arrested in Nevada and was serving a 2-year sentence for probation violation and new fraud charges. I felt sad for the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, but I felt no guilt about the choices that had led her there. On my 70th birthday, Emma and Jack threw me a small party in my garden. Mrs. Henderson came, along with my book club friends and some of the volunteers from the animal shelter. We ate cake I'd made myself, and I blew out 70 candles while thinking about the future instead of the past. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat on my back porch watching the stars. I thought about Harold, about the life we'd built together and the daughter we'd raised. I thought about trust and betrayal, about love and loss, about the difference between being alone and being lonely. I was alone now, but I wasn't lonely. I had friends who cared about me for who I was, not what I could give them. I had grandchildren who loved me unconditionally. I had a life that was entirely my own, free from manipulation and fear. The house was quiet around me, but it was a peaceful quiet, the silence of safety, of freedom, of a woman who had faced the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged stronger on the other side. Somewhere out there, Ainsley was living with the consequences of her choices. I hoped she would find a way to heal, to become the person she was capable of being. But whether she did or not, Her story was no longer my responsibility to write. I was finally, completely, beautifully free. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.